Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the session. We were just dealing with some of technical issues. With us today, as I said, is a panel which has some very talented women as well as experts in the fintech space. We will be talking about the customer journey for women users. The panel will be moderated by Yosha Gupta, founder of MeMeraki, and I'll hand it over to her to introduce herself and the speakers on stage. So I'll be disappearing and hiding, and over to you, Yosha.
Thank you, Mashir. Hi, everyone. Discussing a really important topic today, the customer journey for women users. And those of you who attended the last session, I'm sure you heard a lot about the opportunity of the female economy and the female market. And my name is Yosha. I'm the founder of a brand called MeMeraki. But I've had a background in fintech for about 15 years or so. And in fact, the report that Inez mentioned in the last session about fintechs catering to the female market and leaving, trillions of dollars literally not catering to the female market. I actually have worked on that report as well, and lots of interesting insights from that, which hopefully we'll cover in the course of the conversation. But I'd love for the panelists to actually introduce themselves and tell us a bit more about, their own startups and their businesses as well. So maybe Jessica, if we could start with you, and then we'll dive deeper into the conversation.
Thanks, Yosha. Thanks for having me. So I'm Jessica Lam. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of WeLab. We're a Hong Kong-based Pan-Asian fintech company with digital financing services in Hong Kong, China, Indonesia. So everything in financial services, from online lending to running a fully licensed digital bank. So as we think about the customer journey for our customers, it's everything from where do you begin to planning a very holistic life journey for everything related to financial services, whether it's opening a bank account, whether it's savings, whether it's lending, whether it's going to be wealth management later on. So happy to share some insight on that from our perspective across Asia.
Thank you. Yeah, looking forward to hearing more. Leeanna, do you want to go next?
Thanks, Yosha. I'm Leeanna from New Zealand. I'm the CEO and founder of finappster. Finappster is a platform that enables asset managers to understand how socially responsible their investments are and communicate that with their retail investors. We focus on the Asia-Pacific region, and I'm really happy and keen to share with you some of the information that we have around women investors and what the future looks like for us.
Lovely, thank you. Ifeoma, and for everyone, we're facing some trouble with the video, but that's fine. We could hear you well, so we'd love for you to tell us more as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ifeoma Uddoh. I'm based in Lagos, Nigeria. I run, we started out as a fintech company, a credit fintech company for women, and we allow the women give us feedback on what they want from their financial institution. And we are currently evolving into the first female digital bank for women. So I'm glad to share my experience and my knowledge with everyone here.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think, just to sort of set the stage a little bit as well, while we heard about the opportunity in the last session, and in fact, we touched a little bit on the customer journey a bit in the last session as well, but I think just to highlight the point that women users actually, while 65% of women only benefit from financial services at this point of time, which is about compared to 72% of men. So there is a gap, in terms of how many women actually do end up using financial services. But even more so, that being underserved is one part, but the fact remains actually that women are actually very dissatisfied with their financial services as well, because BCG actually had a report very recently as well, which showed that 73% of women, are dissatisfied with the financial services they receive, right? So I think it's quite interesting to then start uncovering that, why is that so? And actually start unpacking this idea of customer journey. And I know, Jessica, you started speaking a little bit about that, right? That what is this actually, right? And in the last session, we spoke a little bit about pink marketing. So is customer journey just about marketing and, how we're speaking to women users? Or, there's a lot more in the whole customer journey as well, the whole product, the whole roadmap. How do we actually disaggregate data and we look at our users, right? So just start unpacking that a little bit, that for each one of you, how do you look at that in your own, in your businesses and the startups that you're working in? So again, Jessica, if we could maybe start with you.
Thank you. First of all, the way I would say it, everything that we do is very much data-driven. It's technology-focused, it's data-driven. How are we doing things differently from what the incumbents or people have been doing for the last 50 to 60 years. And the beauty of what we have right now is data doesn't lie, or data gives us very strong empirical points. So when we look at data, there are several factors to consider. It could be age, it could be demographics, it could be geography, it could be gender. And one thing, I shared with Yosha before we had our earlier conversation was we didn't specifically look at gender as being a topical issue that would make a huge difference. However, after speaking with Yosha, which is bringing this to our attention, I went back to the team and I said, can we look at data and see if there actually is market difference in behavior between men and women? And I think the Cliff Notes version of this is no, there isn't huge discrepancy in terms of behavior. However, having said that, if we start to drill down a couple of layers, right, into different age groups or spending patterns, etc., we do see these micro patterns of female users or users in different age demographics. I'm going to throw out something superly, you're not going to be surprised by this, but female use. So we have a debit card for spending, for buying purchases both online and offline. Female users in general spend 2 times as much compared to male users in the categories of online, basically shopping, right, and cosmetics and beauty. It sounds totally stereotypical, and I hate doing this, but it's a fact, right? And the thing is, we are not surprised whatsoever. However, when you look at categories such as F&B or groceries, it's reasonably 50-50. So again, sometimes statistics tell us one thing, but at the same time, statistics also tell us that maybe gender isn't, very different in that sense. Now, however, one thing that I will share with you is probably we're seeing more marketed differences in terms of age, right, or population. So our oldest customer is 83 years old, but 70% of our customers are between 20 and 39 years old, because it's a digital-only platform where everything is done online and we don't have branches. Again, these numbers should not be surprising, but seeing data sometimes helps us reinforce what we know, and it can also prove us wrong every now and then, which we like, because that will force us to, revisit our assumptions, which is extremely important. The last nugget I will throw there about the user journey, on whether it's just about marketing or whether it is about looking to how to encourage female users. I think for us, what we see is it is always about the first step. How do you get them engaged and on board in the first place? And I'll throw out one more statistic for you, which is if you look at our WeLab Bank customer base right now, it is currently 40% female, 60% male, which is not hugely different. It's close to 50-50, but not quite. So 40-60. Now, we've seen a lot of research in different markets, as well as what we've seen in user behavior here, which is, and it's a little bit too early to tell, so I don't want to be overly conclusive, but one trend that we've noticed from some of the feedback is the willingness to try and be a slightly more risk. Women tend to be a little bit more risk averse. That includes investment decisions, which I'm sure Leeanna can touch on later. But also in terms of willing to try new technologies. It's of the whole, if not broken, why fix, why try something else. So that may be one of the reasons why we tend to see more men or more males in terms of getting comfortable with new financial services or products that are digital. And this is actually something that, we are still testing and hypothesizing at this particular point in time, but the data has shown it's 40-60 today. Come back to me in a few months' time if we change our marketing strategies. That might be quite different. It's not a conscious decision. It's more of this is more of the output at this point in time, but this is something that we're aware of, and awareness is probably the first step.
No, that's and it's really interesting that you brought up the point that after speaking to us, you actually went back and at least emphasized to the team to look at sex disaggregated data, right? So that was really useful as well. Leeanna, would be actually, this is a great segue, for you to come in as well and then talk about, what does that mean for you, the whole idea of customer journey? Was there a specific insight that you had because of which you started, specifically looking at sustainable investments?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Sustainable investing is absolutely driven by women, from the research to making the actual investments. If you're familiar with a company called Morgan Stanley, they've been doing some surveying over the last few years. It's called the Rich Thinking Survey. And that survey actually shows that, I think the most recent one said that 84% of women, compared to 67% of men, wanted to invest in companies that had a positive social or environmental impact. And so that's slightly different than what many investment providers are doing now, which is simply removing, we call them the sin stocks. So things like cigarettes, pornography, slave labor, cluster munitions and bombs. So they're, the companies that do all the bad things. So, it's given these days that most investment providers have already removed those types of companies from, portfolios like we invest in for our retirement. But it's interesting that, we women actually want to focus on those companies who are trying to do good. And it is significantly different. And it's a real shame, in fact, that, the vast majority of us actually feel like financial services don't actually understand us, and therefore they don't communicate with us. And that's a real shame because, women control about $72 trillion worth of global wealth. And, based on that, you would think that there'd be a few more financial services really looking at understanding women and what they need to really be able to enhance their financial well-being, especially as they grow older and into their retirement. But a lot of feedback from women that we find is that, there's a disconnect with advisors, financial advisors, because they're used to communicating in the more traditional way where they look at things like PE ratios and risk and return. But actually what women want mostly is more emotional engagement, both in a relationship with an advisor or their financial provider, and also in the products that they buy. Because, women do talk about their investments and they like to help each other. And it's a lot easier to talk about their investments, when they have that emotionally vested interest in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is, again, like from the last session also, I can see a lot of commonalities springing up around relationship, and, it's not just a transaction, right? Okay, thank you so much for doing that. Ifeoma, if you could step in as well and talk about, what was your insight because of which you started a platform specifically focused on women entrepreneurs, with Shecluded. Would be great to hear about that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think for me, the first thing that struck me is the fact that I found out that the women worldview and the worldview that I did work in corporate was different. When I started, I wanted to run a technology company, a big technology company. So I was focused on tech. Then I started and I realized that women didn't want tech. They wanted their troubles and their problems met.
Yeah.
So I put a stop on tech to say, what exactly is happening here? And I started doing a few research about women, and I found out that most women are juggling 2, 3, 4, 5 stuff. So if you don't make your technology journey very easy, you're likely to have them fall off. And I saw that with research, even for grants and for different things, that they say, like, the data here, there's this popular grant here locally in Nigeria, and they say that the women always fall off. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was to say, stop. How do I create a technology that was very, very easy for a woman to start it and finish it, knowing by my own self, I am an entrepreneur, I'm a mom of 3, I'm a wife, and if I start something, I don't have the luxury of time to finish it if the technology journey is very, very hard. Mm-hmm. I think that was one thing I found. Then another thing I found was in communication. So let me use, for example, when we started, you say, come and take a loan. Women said they were afraid of loans. Mm-hmm. And I mean, when I started, we're not necessarily focused on the bottom of the pyramid. I was focused on women like myself because I felt that those segments of women were ignored. And these women have gone beyond providing for their basic needs. And if you promote them and entice them to grow further, they can actually employ more people and they can actually grow. But I found out that when we did something, when we said, come and take a loan for a laptop, for a new machine, come and take a loan for personal development, there was a change. So I now understood why many of them follow. Financial institutions, like Leanne said, have not been able to communicate with women, which is something that, as cliche as it sounds, is very, very important to know that the way you communicate, if you want to get the demographic that's female, you have to be very, very intentional about it. So that's one thing. That's another thing I found. Then the third thing was in terms of relationship. I mean, I wanted to run a fintech company that was, like the other guys that I know, just business as usual. But the women wanted to have a relationship. So I found that quickly shaped how we operate. I mean, we've had like focus group to grow your confidence, focus group to introduce yourself, like different things that personally, I mean, it's not my personality, but women like community. They want to be part of something. And guess what? I noticed that to engage a woman, another woman can engage a woman more than you as the company. So, for us, we started using it to our advantage because, when we put them in a group, maybe there's somebody that's very active in the group and the person becomes like the ambassador for that group and stuff. So it's a very, very, we're still learning and we're still evolving. But yes, I think for us being very specific to women makes us very aware that actually the traditional financial institution has to actually do a lot of changes to be able to accommodate more women.
Yeah. That's really interesting, actually. And in fact, the insight that you mentioned around, changing the description from take a loan versus saying take a loan for, this or, for a laptop or for personal development. I think, again, it relates back to some of the previous conversation, something mentioned in the previous conversation around life moments that, when you relate the conversation to actually what's going on in the life moments of women and how financial services fit well into that, that really helps, move the needle forward in terms of adoption of financial services for women. I think would be great to talk a little bit more around, there's a lot of demand side research, which has been done earlier, by the Financial Alliance for Women, by companies like the Women's World Banking, around how women actually do report lower levels of financial literacy. They have lesser business experience, they have smaller networks, and they do seek role models, right? Which basically means that in addition to finance, in financial services, they actually want all of this bundled in, right? That things like access to information, access to networks, access to recognition, all of this, which comes in the ambit of non-financial services, but they want it bundled in with financial services. Is that something that, I know some of you, you touched upon it a little bit, but is that something that you're trying to do in your, fintechs as well? And, it sort of comes in the whole ambit of the customer journey, right? That it's not just about product features, it's about making sure that it's a holistic proposition with non-financial services deeply embedded in. Is that something that, you're focused on, and how are you trying to, maybe try to do that in fintechs? Maybe, Leeanna, would you like to go first?
Sure, absolutely, Yosha. So we do find a lot of that. It's not just the onboarding process where a lot of investment providers focus. So, you'll find that when you are looking around for, a retirement plan, or perhaps you're looking at savings or some sort of investment vehicle to put some money aside, there'll be a lot of information about how great the investment provider is and how great the products are. And you might find one that you really like. And so you engage with that provider, and then afterwards the reporting that you get and the relationship seems to sort of dwindle after that, where our focus is really on providing that ongoing assurance through performance reporting by aligning our reporting specifically to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, so that women like us can start to really understand and appreciate our investments, where previously it's really hard to sort of think, I got a 5% return, is that good or bad? It's instead what we say is, your investment portfolio decreased its fossil fuel emissions by 12%, for example, and that's the equivalent of planting 5 rugby fields full of trees. So, just adding a little bit more relatability to it, and those are the things that are easier to share with people. I think I heard a comment before that women do talk about some of the good experiences they have. Unfortunately, it's not as much as a bad experience, but this is what we want to do, is to get women really talking about their investments and supporting other women with that, because once we start talking about it, we'll learn a lot more and we'll feel a lot more secure in our future.
Can you talk a little more about how do you encourage that? Because in most cultures it's actually true that women traditionally we don't talk about finances as much. Is there something you're trying to do to just encourage that more?
Absolutely, and this is really the first stepping stone, but it is driving that engagement with women by creating messages about their investments which are a little bit more relatable than just this is your return. We're not going to say whether it's good or bad or not. You make that decision yourself. So we have a lot of different messaging which is based around a variety of factors. We're focusing on a few key Sustainable Development Goals at the moment, predominantly around climate change and also around the social aspect. So, companies giving back to their communities, whether it's in charitable donations or in volunteering, enabling their staff to volunteer. And we find that resonates really well because, people can look at their investments and then they see a company, whether it's in a newspaper or, they pass their building on the street and say, oh, I'm invested in that company and they're doing some really good stuff for my community, so I really like them. So having that feel good as well is a real payback for the company when they can report like that.
Thank you so much. Jessica, anything from you around is there something that you might be trying to do in creating a more holistic proposition for women, adding anything around non-financial services, anything you're trying in that?
Yeah, so first of all, what I would say is I don't think women are being, I'm slightly contrarian here, I don't think women are being ignored. I think all the services out there are being provided for everyone. So a little bit to Leeanna's point, women tend to like more engagement or what have you. It's a way of, I guess it's what she came back to, is that you interact with different people in a different way to grab their attention or to build the trust. I think there's slightly higher barriers to penetrate or to get through, and I'm being very generic here, right, in terms of getting the buy-in or the comfort factor from the female population in general. Now, this is a hypothesis that we are yet to test, at least from our perspective, but trying to repackage something about what Leeanna said and some observations is, but once you get that, I guess the next question we have on our mind is, before I go to that, it's a little bit of the onus is on the women themselves to actually take that proactive action. So you talked about extreme high levels of financial literacy from females, right? But what are they doing with that literacy, right? Just because you're literate, are you brave enough to actually make that investment or make that call, right? So one thing we've seen actually from our data, women are two times more likely to put their money in a time deposit rather than in savings, than in the flexible savings, because they want permanence or they want something that's long-term rather than investments, right? Now, this is a small data sample that we have at this particular juncture, but is that reflective of being risk averse? Is that reflective of them being or well planned or what have you? Remains to be seen, but that's one statistic to share. The other thing I would say is we need to test this out is once you get over the hurdle and Yosha becomes, she believes that Jessica is a trustworthy person. I want to develop this relationship, this engagement. We start to have that, as you say, a longer term relationship. Does Yosha become more sticky, right? Less likely to leave this relationship because she has invested so much time and effort into it. That is a hypothesis that I'd love to test. Because right now, I don't know. Because there's also a thought that, is the relationship more important or are they more price sensitive at the end of the day? So if, financial institution X on the side drops their prices or is, provides more attractive rates, do I lose out on that? That is something to be tested. And now whether that is specific to the female population or just to different age groups or different demographics or, different groups, those are all the things that we'd love to test along the way, but it's certainly something to be aware of and some of the topics that you guys raise. And I think it's very interesting, but I would say that it is also on the onus of the individuals, the female population, to take action on what they're literate about. We can only offer so much out there to make them feel as comfortable as possible. But it's like your job, it's like your life, it's like your career. You also need to take that step forward as well.
I understand.
Look, I absolutely agree with you, Jessica. I think, when women do start out with investing, it is all about staying safe. So, as you grow through routines, you might have a savings account. If you leave school and get a job, you might have a little bit of money saved and you obviously want to keep that safe. So you do go for the safer option. So you do stick with your savings account or you do stick with your term deposits or your fixed interest investments. But look, there are some good stories that come out of that. So, it's about building that confidence. So once you've finished with that term deposit, you made a little bit of money and then you become a little bit bolder and you try something else. It might be, a shorter term deposit that's got a slightly higher interest rate. And then you make a little bit more money. So, it's not something that happens overnight. Yeah. But what we do find is that, those that do take those incremental steps, they do become a lot savvier and they do become more willing to take risks. So, it does, after a while, they've made a little bit of money, they're feeling okay about life. And, they do start looking at companies like equities and thinking, oh, well, I've heard this big tech company, for example, I'm really interested in them. And then they might start looking into how they might buy a share or buy a couple of shares. And that's when they start talking to their friends a lot more about, how did you do this? How did you find it? Who did you use? Mm-hmm. And so there are conversations around that. It does take a little while, probably a lot longer for women than it does for men. And because there are so many women who are still starting out on this, the conversations are probably not as common as there are for men. But look, I'm privy to a number of women-only share investor clubs, and that is literally when women get together, everyone has a glass of wine, they bring their investment ideas. It's a general catch-up as well, but the purpose of it is that, everyone puts $20 in and, once we've run the kitty a little bit, then we decide an investment and we do it together. So, it's a lower risk for us. But we're still trying it, and I think that's the really important thing. Yeah. And just wanted to add to your second point as well in terms of stickiness. So I'm not sure about the stickiness of the relationship compared to a price point, but I do know that people who invest in responsible or ethical funds are more likely to stay in them for up to 2 years longer than a normal fund. Now that's comparing an ESG fund to a non-ESG fund. So I think there is a bit more stickiness there, and I think it's because they can create that emotional engagement and see the positive impacts that their money is contributing to.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And just to add to that, actually, most research does show that women users, while it might take longer to, start using financial services, but once they do, they actually do stay longer, right? And hence, even in the research that I was referring to earlier, the LTV for women users actually ends up being more for people for the fintechs who actually done that, disaggregation of the data, precisely because of reasons, like this. Ifeoma, if you want to add something here as well around, we started with the whole discussion around non-financial services and creating a more holistic proposition, and obviously, you're doing precisely that. So if you want to add a little bit more around, it's that along with the product, what else are you adding in your proposition at Shecluded?
Yeah, it was so funny, but when you were talking, I was taking notes because that's basically what we've seen, which is access to network. They want network, they want more information. Tying back to what Jessica said earlier, which is that, what do they do with this information? it was a frustration that I did have when I started. But I started because I saw, like, I mean, for women that some of them we met and we said, hi, you need a new factory, you sell out early. And she says, no, I don't like taking loans. And, you know, I'm like, why? And they're like, you know, interest rate. And we changed the communication to say there's an interest rate for not taking loans. And she paused.
Interesting.
She never thought about it.
Yeah.
I said, yes, there's an interest rate for not taking loans. So because it doesn't leave your account, doesn't mean that you're richer.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, after a while, I started teaching them that, see, I know you're scared. I'm also scared. But it's also, the discussion should always be based on what is the ROI of my discussion. That's why you're a businesswoman.
Yeah.
What is the ROI? I mean, when we started dealing with financial institutions, I saw that most financial institutions, their proposition for women was low interest rate. And guess what? They were not getting the numbers and they were not getting the quality of women. When I started working with women in Nigeria, particularly, many of them are in trade. They are in small-scale manufacturing that have high margins. So basically, if you don't understand it, the proposition that you're thinking that women are cheap is actually faulty. It means that there was no woman on that table. Because women are high. When I look at people's bank statement, I see hair, lashes, different stuff, and I'm like, wow, these people don't have as much disposable income, but they spend.
Mm-hmm.
So it means that, you know, in fact, for one of them, I actually said, oh, let me go and get a loan. And I saw, you know, get a guarantor. And I started thinking, who would I get as a guarantor? Is it my husband? I don't want him to know I'm taking a loan. Is it my friends? You know, which of my friends will be confident enough to guarantee me? So I now start seeing the fact that just with little details about understanding today's women, for us specifically in Nigeria and where we are in our journey, makes the proposition, some of the propositions that sound like top on the list. So when we started finding out that even though the price of the loan is very important, just being able to sit down and tell her what she will make, or if it's a very good business decision, is more important to the woman than your price for the loan.
Yeah.
So it's those holistic, those mindset. I mean, I had just to say about mindset. The mindset to do, more women needs to be encouraged to do. And, you know, for some reason, that's why we've tried to start doing different focus group, you know, self-promotion, another focus group, open a LinkedIn account, another focus group, you know, different stuff, because I find out that many women need to actually be encouraged to do. I think it comes from the fear of, you know, when I started trying to, when I started doing Shecluded, I started paying attention to why are women like this? And it's the fear that right from when we were younger, there's been a notion that a woman is supposed to be perfect. So many people don't like that done. It's like breaking a glass, you know, whereas for men, it's like, I just have to be doing. So more women need to be on the line to say, I don't want to be perfect. I want to reach my potential.
Yeah, that's lovely. I love that, actually, you know, that encouraging women to do, and this notion of, you know, perfectness, and, you know, which sort of prevents us from sort of, you know, the idea of failures, right? I mean, that's really interesting. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I think it's, you know, some really interesting insights there. But would be, you know, we've heard a little bit from all of you around your startups, you know, what your insights have been from around customer journey in your startups. Would be great to just hear, you know, some experience around, other than, you know, your own fintechs. Have you seen something really, you know, which has been literally the aha moment that spoke to you personally as a, you know, woman using financial services, that you thought this was a really, really good, you know, well-crafted customer journey as a female user? Anything that, you know, and we'd love for the audience to chime in as well, actually. You know, I think both really good customer journey, and if you felt something was really bad, like your worst experience maybe as well with financial services as a female user, would be great to hear that, actually. Jessica, maybe if you want to go first.
One thing I want to share is getting feedback or getting complaints is absolutely precious. So in the prior pack, when they talked about a net promoter score and said unhappy users at Westpac would tell 46 people, unhappy female users would tell 46 people, and if they're happy, they'd only tell 9.
Yeah.
That complaint is actually extremely valuable information for us, whether that comes from whoever, right? Because that is a data point for us to understand what people find good or not so good. Like reading reviews about restaurants and everything, that's why that is so useful. Whether we agree with it or not, it's a separate issue, right? Because it's about how the other person feels. So what I would say is I'd love feedback, and if anyone has any of these specific issues, I'd love to hear it. Personally, from my perspective, I haven't experienced any qualms about the fact that, because this is not fair to female users or what have you. And from the very beginning, that's always how I felt about many things, because my view of it is, it's not a one size fits all. Nothing is ever one size fits all, and maybe it's not for me, but maybe it's for Yosha, right? Maybe it's for someone else. It's about whether that bothers you enough or whether it's something you can live with and move on with. I'm not being complacent. I'm just picking my battles. So nothing has bothered me enough. So unfortunately, I can't share that insight right now specific to female perspective. But I will share one thing with you, which is in digital banks, right? Being able to get access 24/7 is actually extremely important, whether you're male or you're female. And I think sometimes you don't know what you need until it's presented as an option. So everyone's like, it doesn't matter, I'll just work during daytime hours. But now that we're able to open a bank 24 hours, close to 50% of our bank account openings have been done after hours. So between the hours of 6 p.m. and 9 a.m. in the morning. So my point is, sometimes it's a little bit of trial and error. You don't think people need this because they've always worked within and they've colored within the lines. But once you let them color outside, you realize that there's actually a lot of possibilities out there. So I think that's just sharing a little bit of insight in terms of what we've seen and how I felt, and I'm happy about that as well because I can do my banking 24/7.
Thank you for sharing that. We actually only have a couple of minutes to go, so Leeanna and Ifeoma, would be great to hear from you as well. Any aha moments, in terms of financial services as a female user?
Look, I know a couple of apps that I have used in relation to coming back to investing and also responsible investing. So one of the apps that I find is really good is actually Robinhood. Mm-hmm. So it's a platform and also an app that I can buy and sell individual shares and managed funds. And it also tells me how responsible those managed funds are. Now, that's actually from an environmental, social, or governance point of view, which is slightly different to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. But essentially, you still get an understanding of how environmentally or socially friendly the shares that you're buying are. I've also tried Mint as well. I'm not sure if you get Mint there, but Mint is a really interesting app. It's more of a full service banking app, I guess. So they have all sorts of different products from credit to savings to investments as well, but also really easy to use. So they were founded in the States, and I think they were founded in the early 2000s. So they're, almost 20 years on, pretty savvy in terms of the look and feel and the usability as well. So if you're looking for, apps that can help you with your investing, do have a look at those too.
Okay, thank you for that. Ifeoma, any from you?
None from me. I mean, I just taking notes.
Okay, I guess, I could chime in as well. I mean, you heard one of the speakers in the previous panel, Basis, and I love, how they're building a very, very personalized experience for women users in terms of investing. And the fact is that the realities of women is different, right? If, for example, the gender pay gap is a reality, women do end up taking career breaks, women do end up having a longer lifespan as well, right? And I love, like, one of the examples when we had spoken with them, they referred to was that, women actually were finding it very hard to calculate the different amounts for, different, parts of their lives. And then they actually built these specific calculators. And I thought that was, really interesting that they went from a specific insight and built something quite specifically. So I think, that's the time we have for today's conversation. I hope that gave everyone some good insights into, Leeanna and Ifeoma have specifically built propositions for women users, and Jessica also gave some insights around, how women users are using financial products differently as well. I guess to sum it up, obviously looking at sex disaggregated data would be very, very critical. So, we definitely encourage people to make sure you do more of that and start crafting, products. And someone in the audience mentioned humanizing the journey, right? That's really important, right? That humanize the journey for women users as well. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yosha, and thank you so much, Leanne, Ifeoma, and Jessica. Very interesting insights and very, very helpful for fintechs who are looking to build their customer journey for women users. Up next, we'll be having the panel on investment into women-focused fintechs, where we will have Anisha Singh from She Capital, Jessica Yam from Sogal Foundation and Vector, Debbie Watkins from Lucy, and Virginia Tan from Teja Ventures. So thank you, ladies, for some wonderful insights, and we will be back in a couple of minutes. For the audience, stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thank you.